Dan, I'd like you to come up, because before you start your talk, I would like to welcome you as the newest member of Columbus Rotary and give you your paraphernalia.
How interesting. Oh,
I'm sorry. No, I want to get here. I just want to show it to you. Here's your pin, your book, shirt, all of your.
Thank you very much.
All the paperwork.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Is the money mine too? Well, how interesting that you would invite the interim superintendent of Columbus City Schools on a day where the theme is death and dying. Truly, I'm honored to have the opportunity to address you today as your interim superintendent of Columbus City Schools. You know, Rotary has practiced service above self since 1905, and I know that the 300 plus Columbus Rotarians who are affecting positive and enduring change in the lives of others continue a capital city tradition that began in 1923. For that, and on behalf of the district and its 65,000 students, I thank you sincerely. As you were undoubtedly aware, our Board of Education adopted the recommendations of the Columbus Education Commission, led by Mayor Michael Coleman and City Council President Andy Ginther. That plan, supported by the district's millage committee, has inspired a 5-year reform agenda and was the primary reason I accepted appointment to the Columbus City Schools Superintendency the day after I retired from Westerville's superintendency. It is both an economic imperative and a moral obligation for our community that each of Columbus students achieves his or her full potential, graduating from high school prepared to go to college, to get a job, to serve in the military, or to start a business. And that objective is for every child, regardless of their zip code, the color of their skin, their family's income, the creed they practice, or who they call a parent. To that end, we are engaging district faculty and staff, business and community leaders, community nonprofit and faith-based organizations, city government and neighborhood associations, and even individual citizens, with the goal of reimagining Columbus City Schools as a model education system, effective and efficient, trustworthy and transparent. Columbus is ready for that change. The time is now, and we shall not wait. I'm going to share a few of the actions we've already taken, then talk about the future, and finally leave plenty of time for questions. Our immediate and primary focus this year is literacy acquisition. Children need to know how to read, and yet we didn't meet a single reading standard on the state's local report card. So we've launched a multivariate approach to addressing this essential skill, this foundational learning. First, I've deployed 20 master teachers and administrators from a centralized professional development center to the schools who most need their help. In addition to these professionals, we've placed into our elementary schools 79 teachers on special assignment. Through a partnership with The Ohio State University, we're training these professionals in highly specific methodologies that are evidenced to close gaps in reading achievement. But that's not all. We're teaching high school students to serve as reading tutors, and these high school students will join 233 adult volunteer reading buddies that we trained last week. Already, 22 businesses have stepped forward to adopt schools, and we're looking for more. Intensive, customized support to our learners is required to raise the proficiency level in reading so that every 8-year-old is able to attain the 3rd grade reading guarantee. That 3rd grade reading guarantee is a milestone that has predictive validity when determining if a student will not only complete high school, but will then go on to post-secondary education. This comprehensive reading intervention model I've described as a pilot for the Mathematics Achievement Initiative will launch this spring. It is intended to prepare every child in the areas of number sense, operations, algebraic thinking, mathematical processes, geometry, and measurement. These 2 languages, literacy and numeracy, are essential for the acquisition of all other knowledge and skill. For our students, though, Use of reading and mathematics to deepen their understanding of the world is best accomplished in the context of career pathways, which include college readiness coursework. So we're expanding our vocational offerings as well. In addition to the new science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs, we've added transportation logistics, allied health professions, web graphic design, and others. You see, many of our families and their children want to see the job potential that results from a Columbus City School education. This is one reason our automotive and mechanical arts programs, our food service programs, our customer service programs, and cosmetology programs, just to name a few, all have wait lists. The 90% plus job placement after completing these programs is a strong motivator, particularly for those living in poverty. Interest in our trades apprenticeship program likewise is increasing. Our objective is to have a high-performing school in every neighborhood. Branding our high school programs will continue to provide the rich choices that Columbus City School families appreciate. When I visit the neighborhood civic associations, the message to me is the same. They want the school that they can see from their backyard to be a high-performing school. But they don't want me to tell them they have to attend there. They want to have choices, and we'll continue to deliver on that. But in order for students to succeed in those schools of choice, even before they master literacy and numeracy skill acquisition, they must be ready to learn. Two-thirds of the children we receive in kindergarten are not, while 88.4% of those that attend one of our 44 preschools are. And so increasing access to and affordability for high-quality pre-kindergarten experiences is another priority. And finally, getting the conditions right for learning is critical. Next year, students will take their state standardized assessments online. That's right, the days of paper pencil tests may become extinct within our lifetime. Imagine the possibilities when a test taker can use technology to their advantage, digitally manipulating figures and graphics, voice commanding actions, etc. In Columbus City Schools, you really do have to imagine that. Because first, it may take up to 15 minutes for your circa 1999 computer to boot up. Think of the old dial-up system. And then by the time all the applications have downloaded, the bell rings. For a child, for a teacher, for a 21st century education, this is unacceptable. Last Wednesday, and this is no exaggeration, it took 3 professionals 64 minutes to connect me to the network. If we want to keep our brightest and best teachers, principals, and students, then we're going to need to provide them with the facilities and the tools they require in a competitive and changing global society. That's where our voters have an opportunity at the ballot this fall. While I cannot, on work time, advocate a particular disposition toward the levy, I can tell you what it entails, but you will have to ask me. And before you do, I want to say how grateful I am to you for your work with Colerain Elementary, where you provide and wrap gifts for every student and then host them in a holiday party each year, and for your Adopt a School program, touching over 1,000 students across the last 15 years and providing 2,600 hours of tutoring, and for the clothing you provide to students who otherwise could not afford the uniforms that most of our buildings require, and for the pen pal relationships at Nationwide Children's Hospitals, and to help write those letters for the dictionaries every 3rd grader is given by you, for the service above self fairs, showcasing internships that have fulfilled the 120-hour service requirement for graduation. I could go on, but I'm mostly interested in what you'd like to know that I can hopefully answer. So I'm going to close by again expressing my appreciation to you for your ongoing engagement with the community to raise the quality of living for the wonderful families we both serve, and for your efforts toward restoring Columbus City Schools as one of the nation's premier urban school systems. I thank you kindly for that support. Truly, it is a new day. Yes, sir. The question was, if the levy is successful, will some of those funds be used to bring the technology system up to date? And the answer is yes. There's an earmark in the facilities, the bond portion of that ask in issue 50, and $5 million of that will be used to ensure that Wi-Fi is available on all campuses of the district. Presently, it's only available in some libraries and some laboratories. We hope to address all libraries and laboratories by the end of October, and then begin to utilize thin client technology for all of our faculty by the end of the year. But in order to make all campuses Wi-Fi and to upgrade the technology, we would need the additional resources. That's correct. Back here and then here, sir.
Given the academic performance you mentioned, can the school system afford to require 120 hours of public service by students? Wouldn't that time be better spent on math?
The question was, there is a 120-hour service requirement in order to earn a diploma in Columbus City Schools, and could that time be better spent practicing mathematics and reading skills? Well, certainly it could. Most of that internship requirement is met outside the school day, so again, it is a choice that students would be making after the school day. What I have heard in all the community associations with whom I've met, and mind you, we've done over 112 meetings just in the last month, is that they want to make certain that children are giving back to their community, that they're providing service, that they're investing in their neighborhoods, that they're acting as leaders in those on those streets where many generations of their family have resided, to help preserve the legacy and the traditions of that community. So our community is telling us that service requirement continues to be appropriate. I think if that were traded off and instead children weren't reading and doing mathematics, I would concur with what you say, but during the school day, they are engaged in the academic program.
The past is the past, but really it's not. Why would the select group think that it's not going to be the same as it was, and what are the checks and balances in place to see that it doesn't go back?
The question was about the checks and balances and how are we assured that some of what has occurred in the past doesn't continue to happen in the future. And I would add to that, how do we make certain that many of those good things that have happened in the past continue to flourish and thrive and are scalable across the district? What I have discovered in Columbus City Schools, there really are a number of amazing programs allowing our students truly to achieve their potential and pursue those post-secondary options that are available to them. We do a great job in supporting the majority of our students in that regard. But there are a number of things that plague our ability to be successful in the future. One of those certainly was the data scandal, out of which the district is attempting to evolve. What we have done, actually on my first day on the job, and I believe you had the State of Auditor Dave Yost at your last meeting, my first day on the job, July 1st, Dave and I met, and we talked about what were perceived barriers to the ongoing investigation. And we made certain that we addressed each of those barriers and removed any progress, anything that would impede that investigation. Of the 14 persons originally named in that, there are only 4 remaining in the district at this time. Some of those left of their own accord, others left because after a conversation talking about whether, as a professional with integrity, they could allow the focus to continue to be on them or to be on student learning, they elected to find another place to align their skills. We also have new policies and guidelines. Those policies now prescribe exactly who has access to the student data management system. There are no ambiguities now in those guidelines, so it's very clear how a student is coded. For example, is it 10 consecutive days during a semester or 10 days overall that would allow them to be coded as, or allow them to be unenrolled from the district, and what causes them to be retained at a grade level and when we skip grade levels. So some of that was rather fuzzy in the past because there seemed to be an absence of clear directions in that regard. There were a lot of individuals that also had access to those student management systems, and we have opened a central enrollment center so that the same individuals that input data are interacting with all of the students that are coming into our district. Now you can imagine what a challenge that is, because we speak over 93 languages in this district. And if you don't have someone that's trained in how to understand what someone that doesn't speak English as their first language is saying about the demography of their family and the needs of their child, it's very easy to have miscoding in the system. So the central enrollment has helped us in that regard. I also hired a data pro. I actually worked with this individual in Westerville She has been a successful principal in an elementary and in a middle and in a high school, opened our alternative center in Westerville, and then oversaw all accountability and assessments for the system. And already she's only been on the job 2.5 weeks now, but already has implemented a number of new policies and procedures to ensure there's data behind our integrity. It is an ongoing investigation. When the state auditor determines it's appropriate, those findings will be turned over to the city prosecutor, and then the justice system will continue to take its course of actions, and we certainly would support that. So it is ongoing, but the majority of the individuals named are no longer there.
Can you explain more about issue 50 and 51 for us and what's involved?
Certainly, I can talk about issues 50 and 51. There are a number of, this really is to implement, of course, the Commission's recommendations. There were 55 recommendations. 21 of those I think we could attain actually this year in the 12 months that I'll be with the district. It does some key things. First of all, the accountability piece. One of those issues, issue 51, speaks to the creation of an Office of an Independent Auditor. Presently, the district's auditor reports to the Board of Education that it audits. So this is actually an independent auditor who would report not only to the board president, to the city council president, to the mayor, to a probate judge. There's one other, the county auditor. It adds the checks and balances that we see missing in this particular form of government. It also sets out a model for the state, and part of issues 50 and 51 are really to make certain conditions are right for all districts across the state and to insulate against some of the same concerns that have occurred here in Toledo and Marion and Cleveland and so on. The levy portion of the issue, which is issue 50, first it has early childhood education as one of its primary goals, making certain that we have high quality pre-kindergarten experiences available to every 4-year-old in the city. So that's about 4,723 individuals this year that would be receiving that high quality access to high quality pre-kindergarten experiences. And we state it that way for a purpose. When I talk with families, again, they want to be certain that whether it's a Goddard school or whether it's a Columbus City School preschool experience, or whether it's grandmother that's watching the children next door or a neighbor that has their own daycare set up, that they have access to materials so those children are appropriately prepared and ready for kindergarten. And that's our commitment, to make certain we share those early learning standards with any provider. They wouldn't necessarily only be public providers. A part of that levy also is to address the facilities needs. I've said publicly, and probably maybe shouldn't have been so public about it, that it seemed to me a shame in the 21st century that we'll place our pets in pet palaces and pet kennels that have air conditioning and cable and one life to live or whatever, and our children are continuing to sweat in 92-degree rooms with 80-90% humidity. And that does need to be addressed. And a part of this, part of the bond issue would go to address the maintenance issues as well as replace or renovate 10 buildings. So that's a big piece of that. That's a bond issue piece. We're looking at increasing the number of career readiness programs as well. Like I said before, when I talk with individuals in the community, remembering that over half of our families are living in poverty, and much of that is generational poverty, not situational poverty. They're saying it's very difficult to have this conversation with my child, knowing that a kindergartner that's entering the K-12 spectrum this year is looking at a price tag of approximately $250,000 to earn a 4-year degree. And so for many families, that's not even feasible, not even fathomable. They don't want us to eliminate that option, but they want us to make certain the context in which students are learning, reading, and mathematics have a career focus, so that there's a rich application and they can see the employability prospect as a result of being engaged. We also know that's what motivates people. It motivates us as well. So I think you'll see industry-wide, actually across all the education profession, a movement away from presenting content conceptually and instead presenting those content in real applications, problem-based settings, more internships, externships, and apprenticeships. We're also looking at how to attract more teachers, high-quality teachers. I've had the good fortune to work with the former superintendent of Chicago City Schools, and his company, he developed a company called Teacher Match that actually uses a tool to assess candidates for teaching vacancies. And it's not a perceiver, it's not an interview, it's actually an online assessment that measures across multiple domains But again, the psychometric strength of that has been wildly successful, and it's actually a good predictor of whether that teacher, once working with students, will be able to add a year's worth of value to every single student that's on their record. A piece of this is to replicate high-performing schools, and the piece that's probably most heavily criticized is the piece that shares some of the proceeds of this levy with community schools. Community schools are Ohio's statutory reference for charter schools. So charter, community, whatever you call them. Right now, any charter school can exist in our state and start up shop and not necessarily have accountability for the academics or the financial conditions to establish and operate that charter school. What this levy would do is, and those schools are already really public schools. I don't know if you're aware of that, but what happens is next week is what we call Count Week in Ohio. And they count the number of students that attend each day of that week, and they call it the ADM, the average daily membership. And so they use that number at the state to determine how many funds or what the amount of the funds are that will flow to your district. Well, at the same time, they also look at the charter numbers. And if X number of students are coming out of your district and going to charter schools, then they deduct that $5,800 per student and send that to those charter schools. So we are, through our taxes, paying for charter schools as well as for the district-sponsored schools. What this levy would do is it would create a pool of money, a pot of money, and also require us to have high-quality standards. This is what we say a high-performing school must do if it's going to be in our neighborhood. It would apply to both charters and to the district schools. And we know certainly that there are some non-negotiables, like the academic part that the State Department of Education requires. But then there are other things that we hear in our communities that they want. Just like I said before, there are communities that are saying we want to make certain those students are investing back in their neighborhoods, that they have leadership opportunities, that building that belongs to the taxpayers is available to the taxpayers after school so that they can access those technologies, those libraries, those basketball courts. So what we are in the process of doing now is developing a committee that will determine what those standards are. And in order for anyone to receive any additional revenue, they can already get the money that's deducted at the state level, but to get any of the new revenue from this levy, they would have to agree to comply with those standards. In addition to that, they would have to agree that the independent auditor that's being established would have access to their financial records. So none of these dollars would flow to charters that are sponsored by for-profit entities. So that's one of the pieces that we hear a lot about. There are some other pieces in here, but I could spend all morning talking about that. So let me go on to another question.
It seems like the problems that exist are so basic: math, reading. A school district can only be so successful without the support of parents. So is spending money, flushing money down the toilet, or can you really say that there will be a positive response to that if there's still no structural support at home with the schools?
And I believe everyone heard the question, but the question was related to the support at home that our children have. And you know, it's a valid concern, but I think that's why the time is right now, because our entire community, as I said before, I've had countless meetings with our faith leaders in our community who are talking with their congregations about this very issue, with the nonprofits, with the civic and neighborhood associations. Everyone seems to be aligned in that respect, that we need to do a better job of modeling for each other what appropriate parenting is, what appropriate expectations are to have for your children. It's interesting, and I think that parents want to be good parents. I don't want to beat up on parents. And let me give you one illustration. I was at Southwood 2 weeks ago, and my father, probably in his mid-20s, walks up with a primary age child in each hand at the beginning of a school day. All the children are coming in, 300 children into the building. He has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. It's lit. He spits it out at the bottom of the step. And so instead of chastising him, okay, that's really what I did, but what I should have done is, what I should have said was, you know, can I take your kids so you can put that out appropriately over the trash can? The reason I'm sharing that with you is because I think sometimes people don't have the modeling. They don't necessarily have the parent. We have kids raising kids now. We all know that. And many of those don't have those extended families that many of us had as we were being raised. And oftentimes, parents will just want some guidance on how to be a better parent. I don't know too many parents that bring children into the world thinking, I really want to be a bad parent. And so I think we need to do a better job of helping them understand what are appropriate expectations. I know when I interviewed with Pastor Mike on WVKO, there's a CK, I don't remember what it is, but he said, what is my message to parent? And I kind of got on my soapbox and said, well, here's my message to parents. You know, if you want a best friend, go buy a dog. if you want to be a parent, set parameters. My mother used to always say, we're still part of the animal kingdom. And so we do need parameters, we need training, we need to understand there are certain cultural mores that need to be observed. And I think it's important, and I think it's okay for us to expect of our children certain things, expect them to help in the preparation of the meal, expect them to sit down and dialogue during the meal, expect them to have aspirations for something beyond the generational poverty they've grown up in. But I also think it's up to all of us that may have enjoyed success in some way to make certain we're helping model that and helping create those conditions for them to be success. So long-winded answer, I'm meeting with the parent consultants tomorrow. We have parent consultants in all of our buildings, and we're going to talk about that very notion of how do we engage our families, and really how do we evolve our understanding of what parent engagement is. We need to move away from the notion that the only parents that are engaged are the ones that are available after school or the ones that are available to bring in cupcakes on the holiday parties. And I know in my own family situation where my mother was raising 4 boys, and she was working a couple of jobs, and there were many nights I didn't see her before I went to bed, but she always took time to write notes on my homework, and so I would see those notes. She was every bit as engaged as the mothers that had time to bake cupcakes and come in for those holiday parties. So I think we need to move beyond a really archaic 19th century notion of what parental engagement is. One of the ways we're doing that now is we're beginning to take our parent-teacher conferences to the communities from which we draw those children. So where there is high-density Section 8 housing, for example, we will be taking the parent conferences to the community center in that neighborhood so parents don't have to find transportation, don't have to find childcare. They can stop in and converse with their teachers. So I think there are a number of ways we can move beyond and really change the culture. At the partnership meeting just about a month and a half ago, I'll get right with you, I'm sorry. It was interesting. They said there's only one sample they know of in the world, and it's at Shanghai, where they started the other way. They actually kind of set, this is what our cultural expectation is. This is what we aspire to as a culture. And then suddenly, because faith, family, and education were the 3 foundations, everyone began to value education. Ours is going to have to be much more organic than that, but we can make it happen. And I have specific examples that I can share with you where we have done that in smaller neighborhoods that are highly impoverished and very, very diverse. So it can be done, and we'll do it.
Are you or will you be a candidate for the post-interim position?
The question was, how long can I stand this? We'll see. I think things happen for a reason. This is a little bit of the metaphysical, epistemological, Dan, that you're getting, but I didn't have any intention. I wasn't even looking for this role. The call came about a week before I was to retire. And I think you rarely have opportunities where you can truly integrate all of your capital. Your intellectual, your experiential, your spiritual, your creative, your social, emotional capital into one pursuit. And I thought, well, I'm 51 years old. I'm only retiring because the state says I have to retire as a result of the new pension legislation, but I'm not ready to stop. And, it was one of those hair on the back of your neck stands up experiences, and I thought this is a threshold I'm supposed to cross at this point. So when I stop feeling that way, then I'll know it's time to move on. And if there's a point where the community and the board they elect asks me to stay, then we'll have that conversation then. But right now I'm focused on getting through the Rotary address.
To what extent, and it kind of goes to the question back here, is the school district kind of nibbling around the edges at it? But it sounds to me like what we need are life skills training, not only for the children. And it seems like in most of our school districts, we're doing away with life skills trainings when we should be bringing them back for all school districts. But to what extent are we going to do that for parents? For instance, we talk about utilizing the school buildings. Why not have washing machines? Why not have places where people can come so their kids can come with clean clothes, so they can be fed, so that they can be prepared to engage in learning?
You've just heard from the next superintendent. In actuality, we have 42 new buildings in the district, and the new buildings in the last decade all do have laundries in them and also shower facilities. It is a true concern. Children, those that live in poverty, and please don't stereotype or think that I'm profiling, but when a child comes and is particularly odoriferous, it usually isn't that the child's unclean, it's that their clothes are unclean. And so many of them only have one set of clothing, and Rotary, of course, has addressed that to a great degree, as has Charity Newsies. But the washing machines, we are actually utilizing those, and most of our new buildings are in some of our most impoverished areas of the city. And they're being taken advantage of little by little. It's very incremental. We need to find better ways to reinforce that, hence the conversation tomorrow. But I think, again, the expectation needs to be cultural-wide, city-wide, all of us pulling in that same direction, which is what intrigues me about this opportunity this year, because I believe we do all have that same vision in our focus, or same focus in our vision. Yeah.
You indicated that there are waiting lists for most of your vocational programs. Will you be able to eliminate those waiting lists so that every child can pursue the vocation they want?
Yes. The question was, I've indicated there were a wait list, and I struggled with this in Westerville as well. We had magnet schools in Westerville, and it became an exclusive opportunity if you were selected from the lottery to attend those schools. And I had always contended that why wouldn't we be adding more opportunity for those that desire that? Let the market drive what it is we offer. And yes, so the answer is yes to your question. I had a good conversation with Dave Mangus at the end of last week. He oversees downtown high school, where many of those programs that have wait lists are located. It's not your old joint vocational school, just so you have an understanding. These are truly career centers. Many of these students graduate not only with their high school diploma, but many credits toward an associate's degree and a trade credential, so they can be employed in an apprenticeship, journeyman avenues, pathways. So yes, we will be replicating those and allowing more of the market demand to determine what it is we're offering. I think that's how we need to be responsive. It's interesting, when you look at the work skills study that comes out of DC, I think the Pew Foundation publishes this, the numeracy and literacy skills for the trades actually exceed the level of proficiency for entering freshmen in college, because of the technological nature now of so many things that used to be thought of as more hands-on. So, last question. I think we have to stop. Is that right?
You still got a few more.
Last question. Yeah. So.
You mentioned the challenges facing a student who enters kindergarten not prepared. You talked about the success of your preschools and trying to assist those who are in some version of daycare with materials. But I'm not confident that most daycares are going to take those materials and run with it on their own. Is there more that can be done? It sounds so critical, such a critical time to not put even more effort into how do you help those 4-year-olds be ready for the next step, for those who just don't have access to whatever preschool options that exist today.
So let me see if I can paraphrase this. The question is really, what's the motivation for a daycare provider to really want to adopt these rigorous academic standards to prepare students for kindergarten even?
Or how do you create that motivation for them if they're not going to do it on their own?
So here's the motivation right here. We know that parents choose preschools based for 3 reasons. One, generally it's in proximity to their home or their workplace. Second, affordability. And third, for the rigor, for the academic program. They want some structure for their child. Because this levy actually produces $1 million, quite a few $1 million, that would be available for those daycares in their preschool, so that they could then use that to supplant the need for the tuition for families. This will be a strong motivator. We did this in Worcester when I was there, and the broker for this was our Family and Children First Council that brought together all providers in the city, as well as legislators, government officials, and faith-based leaders. And we talked about how to create that urgency, how to motivate that their desire to have those additional funds so that they could ramp up the rigor of their programs. And one of the ways we did that then was we would publish those that had adopted those standards and call them preferred providers for our families, and that goes a long way toward meeting that third motivation for selecting a preschool or daycare setting. So, last two, yes, sir.
Are you planning to incorporate any aspect of the Khan learning model, which basically says you learn by yourself on the internet and then use classroom time for reinforcement and teaching each other?
Yeah, so the question was about online learning opportunities. Khan Academy, certainly something that kind of swept the media a couple of years ago. We know that Stanford has academies. There's ones out of MIT now too. There are a lot of online learning opportunities for our students, and this is really the biggest challenge. I'll give you the insider edition here. This is really the biggest challenge for my profession, for my industry, for those of you that are in this industry, for our industry. Because it used to be that the teacher was the sage on the stage, the knower of all content, of all knowledge, and they bestowed that to the learners. Well, now the learners come to school already had access to all the content because it's all available through the internet. And so it becomes the educator's job now to help them think about that and be informationally literate. And how do you know that that's accurate, what you've read? How do you jury that? What sort of a rubric, what sort of a filter do you use to determine if there are other perspectives that are missing from that information you've read on the internet? How do you sort that information? How do you format it, communicate it, apply it, defend it, evaluate it? So there are 1,000 Khan Academies now available, and what we call access and utilization of those programs is blended learning. So I may give the assignment tonight to go home and give me the perspective of thus and so on this particular event that occurred in history, but I want you to give me that perspective from some person that was indigenous to the country from which that person came. And then we'll talk about that tomorrow. So what we do now is we actually facilitate, or what we call progress mediate. We mediate your understanding, your engagement with that stimuli and what you've taken away from that to make certain it's accurate, because there's a lot of misinformation and mislearning, and it's very difficult to undo things that are learned incorrectly. So it's really evolving the way we educate. Teachers are becoming educational consultants, facilitators of learning, progress mediators, and there's some resistance in our own industry to that. So it's a tug of war, and I see that in every district. Columbus isn't unique in that regard. But we do need to recognize students have access to all of that information in spite of us, and we just need to make certain they use it in smart ways. Last question. Yes, sir.
I wonder about teachers in the district. Jones in there a couple of times. Not only getting to buy into it, but really have the capability to do what you just described. They probably couldn't even tell us what you just said.
Why make all this up? I don't even know what I said. So the question was, how are we growing our own educators in Columbus City schools to embrace this? Well, what happens is it happens incrementally. What I think I bring to the role is the ability to build relationships, professional relationships with my colleagues. So I'm communicating with them on a daily basis. I've gone through 75 of our 113 schools already, the goal being to touch, hug every employee in the district. We've had extensive meetings with those that are not in classrooms. So spend an hour and a half with all of our custodians, another hour with all our food service personnel. But having these very conversations, kind of whetting their appetite, but also introducing a little bit of that good old Lutheran guilt and fear, and understanding that if you fail to evolve, very quickly we could become an extinct industry, because students will learn, as I said, in spite of us. They will get access to that online, and others, other schools that are successful are providing those blended learning experiences. So a couple of things I'm hopeful I see before I die. And since nobody in my family in the male side's lived past age 53 in 4 generations, I don't have much longer. It needs to happen soon. So, it's kind of sad, isn't it? And we're back to death. Why are you getting out your business cards? I don't even know what I was talking about. So we find that I think they're coming along little by little. I know what it was. I think what's going to be exciting is I think we'll see a day where we eliminate grade level designations for children, because I will tell you one of the biggest challenges now in more affluent districts, more high performing districts, is children are coming to kindergarten already ready to read. They're already reading. Because of the digital technologies, they have what they call iFits. If you take their iPads or their iPhones away from them as early as 18 months of age. And these children are getting the phonetic, the vocabulary, the fluency, even the comprehension now online. So they come to kindergarten, they're already reading, and the kindergarten teacher's saying, what am I supposed to do with this child? You know, we were supposed to do letters today. Doesn't happen anymore. So I think we'll see a system where children are able to progress based upon what they've mastered and what they're ready for next. We'll probably create a whole new generation of Doogie Housers, and that's kind of exciting to me. I think for too long we've told everyone they have to progress at this rate based upon the year they were born with this cohort of students, and that's not differentiating instruction. It's not keeping them intrigued and excited about learning, and innately all Homo sapiens want to learn. So I think it's an exciting place, and I think educators will get there. That's the short of it. I think we're done too.
Okay, you're now Rotarian Day.